But I'm glad that you guys all made it. Welcome to October.
Right.
Yeah, I needed to get here.
It's nice to see several returning faces. I'm starting to getting to know some of you guys. There's Snake Boy. Hey Ian, how many species of snakes are in Alaska? Boot him. Kick him out of here.
Okay, just kidding.
Thank you.
You could have given a random number. He wouldn't have known.
Oh yeah, I have no clue. I do know there is one species of snake at Glacier National Park because it's in the pamphlet.
Very nice, Dr. Christian. You learn something new every day. But I'm
the sarcastic students.
Sharing. Okay. Wasn't as set up as I thought it was. Oops. All right. Welcome to the third meeting of the Wildlife Society. As I said earlier, congratulations on making it through September. We are now in October, and I call October the home stretch because I always feel like it goes the quickest, and then we're almost done. But this is a highly asked about meeting, especially because Dr. Saalfeld is joining us. So like Dr. Grisham said, if you hadn't joined yet, we will be recording this meeting, and we are recording this meeting right now. So if you don't want to be on camera, if you're having a bad hair day, I would recommend turning off your camera so that you won't be videotaped, but it will be on video. So just as an FYI for you all. So just a list of upcoming dates for everyone. The meeting tonight, and then we will be doing a burrowing owl habitat restoration project near Midland, I believe. The date is to be announced, but expected to be towards the end of October. Same idea as with the white-tailed deer capture that we included in the email. We will be COVID testing before we go and participate that, just to make sure that everyone we're working with and all of the peers and professors that are joining us will be. On the 21st, we have the large carnivore supervisor, Dr. Dan Thompson from Wyoming Game and Fish joining us. We have the 3-minute thesis competition the day after for the white-tailed deer capture. And then I have another slide on that later, so I won't get too deep into that right now. We have the second game night on the 29th with our quiz bowl captains. That's Justin and Adeline Payne. Justin is our treasurer. If you're interested in quiz bowl and joining the team, or if you just want to have some fun and get to know a smaller group of students, I would definitely join that. I think the first one went really well. And then on the 4th of November, we have Dr. Brian Millsap joining us. He's the National Raptor Coordinator for U.S. Fish and Wildlife. On the 5th, we have the third episode podcast installment of Wildlife Semi-Filtered. There'll be more details on that as we get closer as well, but just as a heads up. And then from the 6th through the 9th, we will be gone on the white-tailed deer capture. So that is just a little rundown from all of October and then the beginning of November. And then I have a sign-up sheet for tonight. It will ask for your phone number. That's if you guys are interested in joining a group me with an unofficial TTU-TWS group me, just as a way to make some friends. And I know that it's very hard to get to know people through these meetings since we are on Zoom and you can't talk to people before and after like a normal meeting. So we made this unofficial group me. So if any of you guys are interested, there will be a place for you to put your phone number, and I'll have that made up by the end of the week. I know Brandon had a few other things to add on this.
Yeah, I just think that, I was talking to Sophie, I was like, this whole COVID stuff, we're all stuck inside the entire day looking at our computer screens. And most TWS meetings, we all get to mingle and meet each other and make plans together. So we decided to start this group me. Like I said, it's unofficial. It's just a way to meet people. If you're going to go hang out at the park and you're bored and don't want to go by yourself, send a message into the group me and people can just show up and say, hey, you guys can get to know each other. There's just kind of like a group event. If anybody ever goes, hey, I'm going to go to the golf range, anybody wants to go golfing kind of thing. Because I know we've all met our friends through the society. So we just kind of want to give back to you guys during this time. Yeah,
it's also good if you do have questions about the events, you can ask those. If you're in a class where you need to study and you want to make study groups, you can organize that in there. I mean, there's just a lot of different things you can do with this. If you want to join and then you're like, this is a lot more talking than I expected, I mean, you can always mute it or leave, but I think it's a good opportunity to get to know some of the members a little bit better. Since I'm sharing my screen, I can't share the link, but once I stop sharing my screen, I will share the link in the chat with you guys. All right, help needed for the NRM 1401 labs. Megan Huron, who is one of the lab TAs, asked me to share this with you. The October 10th and 11th lab in particular, they still need volunteers. There will be a training day on that Friday before. So if you have never volunteered for the 1401 labs, you will need to go to the training day at 6 p.m. They would prefer if you, well, obviously you have already need to have taken 1401 to volunteer for this. It's preferred that you've already taken 3407. Oh, shoot. And then because they do need volunteers and it's kind of last minute, if you haven't taken that and you're interested in volunteering, email them and they'll work with you, because I know that they are a little bit low on volunteers and they're trying to get people in. So don't think that just because you haven't taken 3407, you shouldn't volunteer. This is a really great opportunity for you to kind of give back to students who are just now learning this. It's also a good opportunity just to kind of get out there and maybe refresh your own rangeland experiences. So it's only a 2-hour time commitment. You can sign up for more than one slot if you want to, but there was also a sign-up sheet sent out by Melissa Moore yesterday. So if you're interested, you can either contact Hayden Hayes or Megan, or you can just go to that sign-up sheet and fill in your name for a couple of hour slots. So we sadly will not be having a camping trip this semester. Due to COVID, it just isn't going to work out. No group sites were open. The bathrooms were open. Lots of things just weren't falling into place for this camping trip. And I know that's a bummer because we all look forward to the camping trips, and the one in the spring is also canceled, but we are very hopeful for the upcoming spring camping trip to take place. They're a lot of fun, but you guys have all been very adaptable and understanding so far. So hopefully that is the same for this camping trip, because I know that a lot of you are looking forward to it. I was also looking forward to it, but we are hoping that the spring camping trip will work out. Okay, Brandon, you're muted.
Yeah, helps if I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
So we got kind of the logistics worked out for the photo competition, which will be for the calendars. So we're super excited about that. The way that we're going to do it is I'm going to have you guys email me your submissions, your photo submissions. And in that subject line, make sure you put your name / TTU-TWS photo competition. That way I can make sure I have credit to your photos and your name. And then we will actually have 6 different categories that you can enter. And you can enter multiple in a category, or you can enter in one picture in multiple categories. Just what you think fits that picture best, enter it in. So we'll have working in wildlife, which will be like people doing field work and stuff. Just one thing about that is make sure that whoever you're doing field work with or whoever you're working for, that you have permission to use that photo. The other ones will have trail cams, we'll have scenery, general wildlife, just pictures of wildlife, and then a funny wildlife if you guys have any of those. And then we'll have TTU-TWS photos. So if you guys have any photos from camping trips or trips you've taken in the past or the national convention that you guys want in there, that's what we're going to do. And all photos will be due October 21st, which is the next meeting, the next Wildlife Society meeting. By the end of that meeting, all photo submissions need to be in. And then I'll go through and I'll send out either a Google form or a Google link somehow to all the members, and you guys will be able to vote on the pictures in each group. I think right now the plan is to take 2 photos from each group or category, and then put those to use in the calendars. So this is a great way. It's free to do. Just go ahead, send us your best pictures, and we'll be happy to get those voted on and get you guys as represented in our calendars.
Yep. So, Brandon, that is on the 21st, they're due, right?
Yep.
Okay. There'll be an email sent out about this after the meeting as well, just so you guys have what wants you to make the subject line. But this is for our first annual TTU-TWS calendar, which will be available before Thanksgiving. So just to get you guys excited for this. Plus, it's kind of cool that we'll have our own photos in there. And then I know a lot of you have taken great photos with Peyton in the media committee. So this is a good opportunity to kind of showcase those. Okay, next up is the Texas chapter of the Wildlife Society scholarships. These just came out. You should have gotten an email about them from Lainey Taylor. The deadline is December 16th. And you can also get the scholarship applications on www.tctws.org. Go to students, and then under students, there should be a link for scholarships, and both graduate and undergraduate scholarships are available. If you guys are wanting to apply for these scholarships, I definitely recommend to do it. I know in the past there's been not very many applicants, so I always say apply for it if you want to. I think it's a really great opportunity. There's 3 really big scholarships that are available. The Colin Carruthers Memorial Scholarship, which is $2,000, was actually won by our president last year, Mike Rainey. There's also the Carl D. Shoemaker, which is $1,500, and the Charlie McTee Memorial Scholarship, which is $750. So definitely take a look at that scholarship application and send in an application if you're interested. I looked over it, and it doesn't look like it should take too much time, but I would definitely say go for it if you think that you might have a chance at it.
And Dr. Conway and I have a long-standing tradition of reviewing anyone who wants their scholarship applications reviewed prior to submission. So if I highly recommend you do that. So if you plan on submitting an application and you want a review by us who have worked with the Texas chapter for many years, please let us know, and that may help. And one other quick point is it may not be like tens of thousands of dollars, but this is a competitive wildlife scholarship, and these types of if you win one of these, it looks really good on a resume, as in your ability to obtain extramural funds in some way, and for you guys at this level of scholarships. So I highly recommend you guys apply, and Dr. Conway and I will be more than happy to review your applications prior to submission if you want.
Thank you, Dr. Christian. All right, and then a quick review over this, because I know I've gone over it now a few times, and I did send out a pretty long email about it. The 3-minute thesis competition is October 22nd at 6 p.m. Email me at sophie.morris@ttu.edu through RSVP. A very positive piece of information is that we just got an increase in 10 to 20 spots for our membership. So the other group that was supposed to go down with us is no longer attending. So we got 10 additional spots. So if you're worried about doing the 3-minute thesis competition because there weren't very many spots and the chances just weren't very good, the chances are a lot better now. So I highly recommend, just like I highly recommended it before, to go and try and get a spot capture. The white-tailed deer capture is at the Youth Foundation San Antonio Viejo Ranch. I personally did not know where this was when I went last year on the coyote capture. So I decided to include this map. This red county right here is where Humanville is, and that is also where the San Antonio Viejo Ranch is. So it's very South Texas, not very close to Lubbock, but it's a good opportunity to kind of go and see some new wildlife and also participate in this capture. Okay, and then the reason why we're all here, Dr. David Saalfeld is our guest speaker tonight. He is from Alaska Game and Fish. He's a wildlife biologist. And he's gotten to work with a lot of really amazing species. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'll send out that link for y'all, and then I will let Dr. Saalfeld continue on his presentation.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, Let me get my screen shared here. Says the host disabled screen sharing.
Okay, let me get Dr. Grisham, I'm gonna make you the host again because I need to figure out how to.
Make me the host and then
Yeah.
I'll get it fixed for everyone.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I thought we weren't gonna meet.
Hi Jennifer, how are you?
Good, and you?
Doing well. Trying to get Dr. Saalfeld set up here with his awesome presentation.
Trying to avoid studying for an exam tomorrow.
All right, sir, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, is that showing up for everybody?
It is not.
Let's see what I need to do here.
There you go, sir.
Okay. Let me drag the presentation over. I got my nice home office now since everybody's working from home. Let me get it to the right screen. That's showing up now?
Absolutely.
Good, okay.
You're in presentation mode and we can see your notes.
See here.
If you go up to display settings, you can switch the mirror right there. I learned this the hard way the other day in class. There you go. Perfect.
There we go. Well, thanks for inviting me, everybody. Joanna asked me to present today on a little bit about my job here with Alaska Department of Fish and Game. And before that, just a little bit of a background of kind of how I ended up in Alaska and kind of my career path getting to this point. And you'll see from some of these early slides that there really is no traditional way to, work your way into the wildlife field. I kind of took a more of a generalist path and worked on a lot of different things, from fisheries to bird work to my alligator work in my dissertation with Dr. Conway. And so beginning, I started my undergrad at Thomas More College, which is a small college in northern Kentucky. And really small, no graduate degrees there. But one of the unique things is that at this college, they have a field station on the Ohio River. And every summer they employ a lot of undergrads as their research techs. So this is what got me into field biology and got me a lot of good experience working on fisheries related projects, from looking at stream bioassessments and water quality. In some of these pictures, you can see we're doing a lot of electrofishing and a lot of water quality work. After doing all this fisheries work, I decided I wanted to get my master's, and I ended up getting accepted at Auburn University and got my master's in fisheries. And again, I was doing a lot of stream electrofishing. And my thesis focused on fish population dynamics around power plants. And as I was working on my master's, I started realizing that fisheries wasn't necessarily exactly what I was looking for in a career. I spent a lot of time working on my wife's actual white-tailed deer project. And I ended up probably spending more time working on the white-tailed deer project than my actual master's. So after spending so much time on that, I knew I wanted to move over into wildlife. And that's where I started applying to wildlife programs for my PhD. And I was really lucky that Dr. Conway accepted me for a PhD position at Stephen F. Austin. And with this project, I had four main things I was really focusing on. And I was looking at growth rates of alligators in East Texas, and we had 3 study sites, and one near Nacogdoches at Kurth Lake, one a little further south at Steinhagen Reservoir, and then one at a private hunt club up near Hawkins, Texas. And with these, we hired a lot of technicians over the summers, and we caught a lot of alligators. And we were really looking at doing a mark recapture, look at growth rates of alligators. And some other topics and questions we asked during these studies where we were looking at nest site selection, hatchling success, nest survival, and looking at we also put some transmitters on some alligators and looked at some home range of movements. And we also did some diet work where we would pump water into the alligator's stomach, give it like a Heimlich maneuver, and have it regurgitate everything in the stomach so we can get an idea of what it's been eating on the past few days. So while working at Stephen F. Austin for my PhD, I graduated in 2010, and my wife was still in graduate school there. So I ended up taking another position with Dr. Conway, and I'm not sure we ever had a formal title for it, but it was essentially a postdoc with him. And I was looking at grassland bird densities on the Texas coast. And with this study, we were primarily looking at how different burn techniques and grazing techniques, and even the invasive deeper to sedge kind of impacted bird densities for wintering passerines. And now I was finishing that project. My wife finished up her dissertation, and then she accepted a postdoc up in Alaska. We moved up here thinking that we'd only be spending a couple years up here with her postdoc. So up here, I spent a couple years taking contract work and doing some short-term non-perm stuff, and mostly working remotely. I was actually hired through Fish and Wildlife through Patuxent in Maryland, working mostly on sea duck stuff. But once we realized how much we enjoyed it up here and how we wanted to spend some more time up here, I started looking for more permanent positions. So in about 2013, I was hired as a wildlife biologist for the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. And with this department, it's really unique where we have kind of in the wildlife department, we have kind of two sections. There's one section, which I was originally hired for, is kind of under management. And their structure is dealing with the hunts, human-wildlife conflict. Up here, and especially around Anchorage, there's a lot of stuff that happens with bears getting into the trash, moose getting entangled in people's volleyball nets or swing sets, especially during the rut, which is happening right now. We were just untangling a moose a couple of days ago that was caught up in some construction tarp. Then they also do a lot of the annual survey and inventory stuff where we're trying to get an idea of how many moose are in a game management unit or how many goats are in a hunt area. And these annual surveys are all taken on by the management staff. But anything that is more of a research kind of question that takes up more time than these management staff have, it goes to our research department. And not many state agencies have a full dedicated research department where they actually have base money each year to conduct a handful of projects. And I'll jump into my 3 projects I'm kind of focusing on right now in a short bit. But this picture here, I wanted to include too, just to show that with Fish and Game, even though I've been talking mostly about the wildlife biologist jobs they have here, we have non-game positions, waterfowl positions, marine mammals, and also wildlife viewing. This is a picture of McNeil River State Game Reserve. And we actually have bear viewing there where 10 people per 4 days get to go out and view bears. And at any one time, during the peak of the salmon run, this is a chum salmon run here at the McNeil River, you can see over 70 brown bears at one time coming down and feeding on fish. So my current position now, I enjoy working with the management staff, but my true passion was always going back into research. And so in 2016, I was hired as the fur bearer research biologist for Region 2, which is essentially South Central Alaska. And for our department, we kind of have a paradigm where each biologist has kind of a narrow window of what they kind of focus on, but it's kind of been shifting lately where even though I'm listed as a fur bearer biologist, you'll see by some of my current projects that I don't focus just on fur bearer species, and I have projects on moose and brown bear and other species that don't fall under what I'm listed as being in charge of. Just to get an idea of some of the species that I'm in charge of researching in this area, it's everything from beaver to coyote, the fox species, lynx, a couple of marmots, wolves, squirrels, all the mustelids. And then uniquely in Alaska, we have some subsistence traditions where black bears can be trapped. And so black bears are listed under several different categories, from fur bearer, because they can be trapped, or they could also be listed under big game or even a hunted species. So we have some real unique game regulations up here that when you look at our hunt books, they are several hundred pages long, and it takes a while to really understand the regulations up here. Just to get an idea of where I work and how Fish and Game is set up here. We have 5 regions, and Alaska is so big that these 5 regions almost set up like 5 different agencies, where some species obviously cross regional borders, but we have full staffs and full almost separate agencies within each of these regions. And I'm focused in the South Central region, which is the yellow area here. And this includes Kodiak Island, which is the island there on the east side, the Kenai Peninsula, which is if you can see there, is labeled as 15A, B, and C. Then Anchorage, and then everything to the east is considered Prince William Sound, and that's the area office is considered Cordova. Each one of these units has a management biologist labeled as an area biologist, and they're kind of stationed in these areas so they can deal with human-wildlife conflict, or even be there accessible for the hunters if they want to come in and ask questions. And most of the research staff is all based out of Anchorage, but we work throughout the region on their different projects. So now just to dive into my current projects I have. So I'm listed as a fur bearer biologist, and my 3 big projects I'm listed as the principal investigator on involve Canada lynx, wolves, and moose, actually. But I also have work on black bear and brown bear. The black bear stuff is mostly in the Kenai Peninsula, and we're looking at diet and exploitation rates of a heavily harvested population. And we also just finished a project in Anchorage on black bear, where we attached camera collars on bears. And if the videos would have been cleaned up by now, I would have included a couple of videos, because we collected 10 seconds of video every 10 minutes on these black bears. They wore them throughout the summer, and we had some great footage of looking at how much anthropogenic food these bears eat around Anchorage. So to dive into the projects that I'm currently focusing on, the first one is a really big one that is really a difficult topic for a lot of biologists dealing with urban areas, is how to count ungulates around a big city. And Anchorage is really unique, where we have a very healthy moose population throughout town, and there's hunt areas all surrounding town, but not actually in town. So it is a hunted population if the moose move out of the town itself. But we have no way of surveying, because our traditional survey techniques involve flying low aerial surveys when there's enough snow. And with the way Anchorage is set up, nobody wants you to fly low in a plane right over their house. So we set up this project to come up with a new technique to get an idea of an estimate for moose in Anchorage. So this just gives you an idea of how we traditionally fly a moose survey. It's usually a pilot and an observer in what's called a Super Cub airplane right there. And we'll fly crisscross a survey area, typically a gridded system, where we survey a randomized sample, a stratified sample of grids. And you fly low, almost 500 feet above the ground, and you crisscross. And you can see from the other picture, that's a picture from the plane. This is what moose look like. They stand out really well when there's enough snow cover. But like I mentioned, in Anchorage, with how the houses are set up, and with the international airport there's no way to fly these low surveys over town. One other thing that's been happening up here with changes in climate is we typically need a lot of early snow in November, December to get these surveys to work. Moose drop their antlers in early December, and to get an idea of comp counts or the composition of the herd, we like to know how many bulls, how many cows, and how many calves. And without early snow, we don't get good data on these variables. Like I also mentioned, the airspace around Anchorage keeps us from flying above it. So due to these issues, we came up with a way of using basically DNA mark recapture to estimate how many moose are in Anchorage. So the objectives of this study were to estimate the population size, sex ratio, and survival rate
What kind of pizza?
of moose in Anchorage, and also to test methodology and techniques for surveying moose populations without being dependent on snow cover. So this is the study area, and Anchorage is, the municipality of Anchorage is actually huge. It's over 2,000 square miles. And so we focus just on the developed area. And you can see just from this map, there's a lot of green space throughout town. And we've always thought there's been about 250 to 300 moose inhabiting Anchorage, but we never had a good number. So this red box just represents where we are focusing this study. And you can see just from the little locator map that you can see where Anchorage kind of sits in respect to Alaska, since I'm not sure how many of you kind of have the big picture of how big Alaska really is. So how do we find moose in Anchorage? Because the toughest thing is a moose could be laying in somebody's backyard. And if we had survey crews out there, even driving around, you would never know that there's a moose in somebody's backyard. So what we came up with is to develop kind of a more citizen science-based approach where they would call us and let us know if a moose was in there, where a moose was at. So we set up a really extensive public relations campaign where we put out when this survey was going to happen over a 3-day period out to social media. We did interviews to, I don't know how many interviews we gave for this project, but each year we stage a huge media blitz. And then we also have during the 3-day survey, we'll have the public text us, call us, or report online the moose sightings they have during the survey. And so in real time, as the public are reporting these, I have staff that will enter the moose locations and kind of geo-reference them. And so this is a screen grab of what the people in the field will actually have. I have everybody in the field has the collector app downloaded onto an iPad. So they can navigate to all real-time moose locations being called in by the public. So that little blue dot there in the middle is basically where the car is. And all those black dots symbolize moose that were called in by the public. And then the public have really gotten behind this project. And we get, for each day of the survey, we get over 300 reports of moose throughout town. The toughest thing with this project too is to have enough staff to cover all of Anchorage and get a good capture area and make sure we cover the whole survey area. So we end up having 6 teams driving, responding to the calls from the public. And then we also have 2 teams dedicated to hike green spaces just to make sure we have good capture heterogeneity throughout the area. And unfortunately, being the person in charge of this project, I have to run the office-based crew, and I don't get to ever go out and dart in these moose. So I run all the mapping and the phone calls and make sure everything is getting sent out to the teams. And then the teams will use those iPads to navigate the moose and get as many samples as possible throughout the day. Just to get an idea of just kind of how well this has worked for us, this is just 2018 data. This has been going on since the full survey started in 2018. And we did it also in 19 and 20, and hopefully we have 2 more years following this data. And the map on the left just gives you the idea of how many reports we get from the public during a 3-day survey. Obviously, some of these are the same moose, but we get pretty good coverage throughout the whole study area and over 1,000 calls for a 3-day period. And then the picture on the right just shows you the moose we sampled in 2018, and it was over 218 samples, and I can show you the results here in a second, but it was over 218 different samples. Some moose were unfortunately sampled a couple times just because they moved throughout town and we thought they were a different moose. So in 2018, we identified 133 individual moose in Anchorage, and it was 95 cows and 48 bulls. And then we also had, of those, 100 were adults and 43 were calves. And just to show you how excited we are with this technique is 2019 was our first recapture period. In that year, we identified 174 individual moose, 123 cows and 51 bulls, 122 adults and 52 calves. But of those, 48 adult moose were recaptured from 2018, which is a really high recapture rate, which is over 30%. So just some preliminary conclusions from this project. We're pretty excited with how good this data has been coming in and how much the public has been getting behind this project. And we're already starting to get some data from 2020 coming in. Unfortunately, COVID has slowed down the lab process, and we're still getting all those analyzed by USGS. But so far, we've been able to get good information on minimum counts, which is just the minimum number of moose in Anchorage, sex ratios through the genetic samples and through on the field ID, degree of relatedness between individuals in town. And we're also collecting samples from all roadkill and hunters, so we get an idea of exploitation rate or susceptibility to roadkill, just to kind of get an idea of how many moose that were being marked or being taken out by roadkill or hunter harvest. With only 2 years of mark and recapture data so far, our population estimates are very, very coarse at best. And as we get more years of samples, our population estimates will be a lot better. We're also getting some survival rate information and good information about movements and dispersal between years. So this is a project that, I'm just giving brief overviews of these projects to give you an idea of some of the things we work on up here. And this project is actually a project Dr. Conway is going to begin collaborating on here this winter. It's focusing on population dynamics of wolves in South Central Alaska. And fighting wolves in Alaska is a really important topic because moose hunting is huge in Alaska, and it's very important to non-residents and residents. And moose hunting brings a lot of money into the state. And throughout the winter, moose are wolves' primary prey base. And they don't, looking at diet samples, there's very little they eat in the winter other than moose. So with the attention of moose for hunters and the public, we start getting baseline data on wolf populations. And one thing that's really unique to Alaska, and I'm not sure how many of you have heard about it, is we have what's called an intensive management law. In several areas within Region 2, which is the area I work, are under this law, and they want to promote game populations in these areas. And so they want to promote moose populations and have them as high as possible to increase harvest. And so understanding wolf populations gives you an idea of kind of how many moose can be on the landscape in these areas. So the objectives of this study were to document the number of packs, pack size, and pack dynamics for wolves in South Central Alaska. And also we'll be looking at estimating home ranges, movements, and habitat use, and also estimating diet, survival rates, dispersal, and population size. In these large projects, there's always 2 or 3 objectives you feel like you can easily get. There's always a lot of side projects that you can get publications or have master's students tackle. For example, I have a project where we're looking at new drug combinations to use on wolves for immobilization. Typically with wolf immobilization, you use a drug called telazol, and you use a whole vial of telazol to knock a wolf out. And a wolf might stay under and at least groggy for a minimum 12 hours sometimes. It'll get up, sleep again, walk a few feet, sleep again. So those first 12 to 24 hours of collar data are really not usable. And it's not good for the animal to be down for so long. So we're working with a new drug combination with some vets and some other colleagues who have the wolves be immobilized for about 45 minutes and have them up and going shortly after. So don't spend as much time on the ground being sedated. So the study area for this project is pretty much every area in the yellow except for Kodiak Island. And this is the Region 2 map I showed earlier. Kodiak Island does not have any wolves on it. However, the primary areas I'm focusing on right now are the western portion of the study area, which would be near Anchorage and the Kenai Peninsula. And the Kenai Peninsula is the main moose hunting area in Region 2. And it also has some of the original wolf work in Alaska occurring by Rolf Peterson. So that was about 40 years ago. And so some of the baseline data I'm collecting now is kind of a follow-up that happened back in the 70s. So in winter, we're trying to capture 2 wolves for each pack. And there's not too many packs when you really think of the size of the area. So the Kenai Peninsula is, I think it's about 10,000 square miles, and we're talking about 12 packs in the whole area. So we're trying to collar about 24 wolves in the Kenai. In Anchorage area, there's probably about 4 packs, so we're trying to collar another 8 through there. And how we find wolves is we get 2 fixed-wing aircrafts up in the air, and they're crisscrossing the countryside looking for wolf tracks. Wolves love to use basically plowed areas, like in the picture on the right, that's a snow machine trail. And since the snow machines mat down that snow, wolves love to run up and down that to ease their movement through they have to go through the deep snow. So we have fixed wing aircraft crisscrossing all through the study area looking for tracks. And when they find tracks, they'll keep following the tracks till they get close enough to the wolves. And they'll call us in with the helicopter, and we'll helicopter dart the wolves once we have them located. All wolves, all wolves get collared with an iridium collar with a remote drop off. And we originally had these collars stay on the wolves for 3 years, but wolves are so tough on collars that not a single collar made it past year 2. So now we have every collar program to drop off after 2 years and just increased our fixed rate to get more GPS points. And while also having the animals sedated or immobilized, we recorded a lot of basic biological data from weight, sex, age, and getting samples like tissue and hair and blood to run for stable isotope and genetic analysis. So hopefully this plays. A colleague just gave me this today, and this is a video of us chasing a wolf through the helicopter. What's left out of this is the 30 minutes it might take sometimes to position a wolf to get in this open lake, frozen lake here, to actually chase it. So let me get this playing here for you. Maybe it won't play here. Let's see. Huh. So we're positioning the animal to run out in this open lake here. It's just a pilot and the darter behind him. And you can see the wolf running on the far right-hand corner there, and it's on a snow machine trail. And wolves are one of the hardest animals to dart because they're really hard to position and keep moving in a direction you can actually chase them. And he missed his first shot, so they're repositioning right now. And you can see how close we actually get to the animal. Most shots are less than 10 yards. And the helicopter pilot will actually match the wolf's speed, so you don't have to aim in front of it at all. You just aim right at the center of the wolf's back, and usually you get a really good rump shot. He's running on a snow machine trail right now. And he can move a lot faster on that than the deep snow next to him. At the end there, the tail end there, he actually darted the wolf. So once they're collared, these wolves are tracked by fixed-wing aircraft at least twice a month. And that's how we're estimating pack size. So we have at least 2 members in each pack. So in the wintertime, the packs stay together because it helps them take down larger prey like moose. So that's how we're going to be using the fixed wing flights to estimate our minimum numbers for these areas. So to date, we've captured 62 wolves almost all of them so far in the Kenai, because that's been our main study area. Some of the interesting things we've found so far is this is a heavily harvested population. 28 of my collared animals have been harvested already. There's only been 3 natural causes. And that's really unique for a wolf population, where if you look at some of the literature from interior populations like Denali National Park, that these populations actually have a lot of territorial disputes, and a lot of wolves kill other wolves over territories. And we have not seen that at all in the Kenai. All natural causes have been by either bear or actually stomped by a moose. And then we've had 1 hit on the road. Some of the really unique movement data we have so far is, as expected, wolves will disperse and move long distances, but we've had 4 of them move over 100 miles from their capture location. 1 moved up to near Anchorage. There's military land just north of Anchorage, and that's already, that wolf paired up and denned. 1 moved almost to the Canada border, which is where Lake Louise is. So that'd be East Alaska, and that one was harvested by a trapper. 1 moved all the way north to Denali National Park, over 300 miles. And then 1 currently is moved all the way across Alaska and is almost in the Arctic coastal plain, which is, if you hear a lot about the oil drilling in Alaska, this is where this wolf has moved from. So it moved from basically south central Alaska across the whole interior and then up into the Arctic coastal plain. And I'll show you a map of its actual route here now. So we collared it down in the Kenai near a city called Soldotna. And it spent most of the spring down on the Kenai through April, and we collared it in February. So it spent about 2 months down on the Kenai, and then it just made a straight, almost very little wandering around, and worked its way straight north. And now it's in the Brooks Range and is in this pass right there. If anybody ever watched Ice Road Truckers, which was a famous Alaska TV show for a while, that pass right there is the one they drive the trucks through to get the supplies to the oil rigs up north. And that dispersal is over 550 miles. And what's really unique too is an adult female, a mature female, that actually we thought might have been the alpha female of the pack we were after. So for her to move such a long distance is odd for wolves, because most dispersers are subadult males. And this is just giving you a representation of what we're looking for, is to look at that territory or pack size or pack territory home range. And this is the southern part of the Kenai Peninsula. And you can look at the locator map there. It kind of gives you in red, shows you where we're looking. And this likely represents 5 packs. This is 2 or 3 years worth of data. And you can see they do kind of have somewhat distinct boundaries. If you look closely, there is some movement between areas. And you have a few individuals that kind of go on a little foray, and then they go back to their main home range. So the other project I wanted to kind of highlight is one I started last year. And these are just 3 of the many projects we have going on, but these are the 3 that I'm PI on. And this one's looking at movements and population dynamics of lynx in Anchorage. To just give you a little background, Canada lynx populations in Alaska and Canada fluctuate greatly over a 9 to 11 year period. They're responding mostly to snowshoe hare abundances. And we currently, as an agency, open and close lynx seasons to try to take advantage of their oscillations and harvest them high when their numbers are coming up, and then close the season as the numbers are going down. The tricky thing about that is there's very little data to back up when to open and close them. We mostly use harvest records, and oftentimes you miss the actual timing of when to open and close these things using just harvest records alone. So starting this study with collaring lynx around Anchorage, we're hoping to get some more data to fine tune this tracking strategy and kind of have a better idea of when to open and close these seasons. So the objectives for this study were to estimate home ranges, movement patterns, and habitat selection of lynx on Jay Bear, which is the military land north of Anchorage, and then also surrounding habitat, which would be the Anchorage hillside. Now, a lot of these lynx were actually caught in people's backyards. we just put a walk-in trap in their backyard, and they could actually probably watch it from their back porch. We caught 7 or 8 lynx just in people's backyards in Anchorage. We're also looking at estimating survival rates, dispersal, and population dynamics of Canada lynx too. So in winter, we're attempting to collar about 10 to 15 lynx per year, and lynx are trapped using a walk-in trap. Lynx in other areas that are less populated use footholds, but when you're trapping in somebody's backyard, the image of a lynx being stuck in a foothold is just not good for public relations for the agency. So we're using these walk-in traps that we build ourselves. In this top right picture over here, you can see we make it out of basically chicken wire or PVC pipe. And then inside is a treadle, and we have some duct tied on a rope. And so when the lynx steps on that treadle, it drops the door there, and it has been pretty effective for us catching lynx in Anchorage. Once lynx are caught, the adults are collared. Being a small animal, we have to be really cognizant of how big of a collar we're putting on them. So the kittens from the year are too small. So we are looking at individuals that had to be at least 15 pounds to put a collar on them. And we also record the same biological data we collect with wolves, everything from tissue, hair, blood, and also uniquely marking them so we can see if they come in through harvest. So we started captures in November 2019. And so far we collared 9 adults, 5 males and 4 females, and when we captured 10 kittens that were all released. We were most productive in November and February, March. And typically November is when we first get our snow. And so they were starting to, the hairs are not fully white yet. So it seemed like we were really productive in November, and then February, March is breeding season. And they seem to be moving a lot more. So we did really well those months. In the future, we won't trap all winter long. We'll probably exclude December and January to try to reduce capture effort. So far, 1 collared male has dispersed over 500 miles into Canada. And this is something that I'm collaborating with Fish and Wildlife Service on, and they're collaring lynx in interior Alaska. And what's really odd, and we're trying to figure out, is it might just be their life history strategy, but when right now we're really high with lynx with hair numbers in Anchorage. And it's really hard to understand why this lynx left the 500 miles from an area with plenty of food to go to Canada right now where we're at low hair numbers. And with the Fish and Wildlife Service, their study, they're finding it not just as males, but they're finding all combinations of males, females, subadults, pregnant females, females with kittens. There's really no pattern of what individuals are dispersing long distances. So all of the collared lynx in Anchorage inhabited small home ranges. This is likely showing that we're near peak hair numbers. This just should give you an idea of their home ranges in Anchorage. The top 2 are in the military base I was talking about, and the other 6 are stacked on top of each other. And it's really hard to see. There's 6 of them there, all on the Anchorage hillside, all caught in people's backyards. And what's unique about Anchorage is we butt up to a big state park, and that's that black outline there. And so that state park is really good lynx habitat, and a lot of animals move in and out of the state park into Anchorage itself. And that's what also causes a lot of the bear conflicts too, because a lot of bears come down from the state park into Anchorage to find anthropogenic food. And this just gives you an idea of the long distance movement that one lynx took. It started off in Anchorage and went straight east and crossed into Canada, almost made it all the way back into Alaska down there near Skagway, which is it's really hard to tell on this map, but it's where it kind of dips down there. And then it looped into British Columbia, which is where it is right now. And those are just kind of some of the projects I have going with Fish and Game. What I wanted to kind of stress to everybody is there's a lot of different paths to a wildlife career. Working in Alaska is great because you get to work on a lot of unique species that are just not available other places. But there's many paths there. And I also stress that what's really helped me is working with a lot of different biologists, because you learn something from each one when you're in the field with them. And that really helps you as you go forward in designing your own projects and coming up with the right questions to ask when you're trying to set up a study. So with that, I think if you're all still with me, I can answer some questions.
Great. Thank you again, Dr. Saalfeld, for joining us. I know that was probably very interesting for everyone getting to hear about the research you're doing down there. We have about 20, 25 minutes for questions, guys. So if you have any, definitely shoot away.
Was Alaska your first choice to I guess like basically start when you were in school?
No, it wasn't. We never moved. We were never even planning on moving up here until my wife got offered a postdoc up here. And after spending 2 years with her doing her postdoc up here on shorebirds, we realized how much we enjoyed it up here. And I'm not saying we'll be up here forever, but the uniqueness of what you get to work on up here is really, we've really enjoyed it. And there's not many positions like I have right now where I get to work with everything from wolf to moose to bear, a little bit of Dall sheep work. I did have a grad student just graduate doing a Dall sheep project. So it's a really unique place and a lot of good opportunity up here.
Jorge, speak up.
We just got a question from George that asked, have you guys ever thought of implementing drones for the moose surveys in the cities?
So even drones get in ways of the air traffic. With having a big international airport, there are drone restrictions flying over the municipality. So there's discussion of using them away from town, but flying over people's houses in the controlled airspace of Anchorage, we weren't allowed doing that.
Gotcha. I actually had a quick question too. For the moose surveys, you said that they would accidentally, the first year, they like got samples from the same one. How do you guys mark the moose so you make sure you don't, or like how do you check that it was a recapture the next year?
So so this has been a debate we've had numerous times with the fellow biologists. Ideally, we'd mark each one as soon as we got the genetic sample from them with like a paint mark or something. And we tested a few paint markers. And what happens is when you hit the moose with a paint marker, it either goes too deep in their coat, you can't see it, or it splatters everywhere and gets surrounding houses and cars. So around town, we realized we just couldn't mark them. So the only way we know if we sampled an animal twice is through the genetic analysis the lab does. So ideally, you'd know if you got that animal already that year, but for us, we don't know until the samples are run.
I got a question. For those students that are looking for a career up in Alaska, what skills would you recommend us having to move up there to work?
So, for Alaska, we really stress a lot of good field work, experience working with a lot of larger ungulates always helps out. So working with white-tailed deer or something down there would actually help me. And it really is how you sell yourself in an interview. Is what helped me is I sold working on alligators as working as a large dangerous species, very similar to working with bear and moose. And so how I sold it was what really helped me get a position here, showing that I can handle myself around a larger animal like a bear or moose. Because before moving up here, my only mammal experience was working with white-tailed deer, and that wasn't my master's project at all, but I did spend a lot of time on it. So I know for like my grad students, I have one starting soon doing the wolf project. He actually did a college internship with us up here, and he's been on everything from, unfortunately, maulings. He's had to respond to maulings where a bear will maul somebody. He's helped out on all the research projects. He's getting experience now working with the mobilization techniques where I've let him do all the immobilizing of lynx and going to train him up on darting wolves here soon. So sometimes it's getting your foot in the door and then getting trained on new techniques, because nobody expects you to have experience darting a moose or a wolf when you apply up here. But showing that you have experience that can translate over really helps out.
Thank you.
I had a question about your studies on alligators that you did. What led you to get into that?
So with alligators, it was actually, I was applying after my master's to a lot of different wildlife programs. And I was always interested in doing wildlife work. for one, it's such a unique species and very few people get to work on it. And Dr. Conway actually was the one that got the grant and was looking for applicants for the PhD program. So I applied for that and interviewed with him. And then him and I designed the project to answer the questions we wanted to ask. There was a few questions that Texas Parks and Wildlife wanted addressed, but how I expanded from there was up to me. And so Dr. Conway gave me a lot of flexibility in kind of designing the project the way I wanted, and got a lot of good stuff out of that, which really applied to stuff I'm working on right now with looking at home range of movements and a lot of population dynamic stuff like survival rates and population estimates and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question also regarding to the alligators. I know you mentioned something about survival rates or nest and hatch survival rates. Was there anything you found that would severely inhibit the survival rate of the hatchlings coming out of the nest?
So there's a few things with alligator nests. So there, in East Texas, a lot of feral hogs. So they would dig up and root around an alligator nest and tear a lot of them up. There's also sometimes like, there was a lot of flooding a couple years in my project. So I think it was 2017, about 3/4 of my nests were all flooded. So like distance away from the edge of the water was a big factor in determining the success of a nest. And also where they nested, like if they nested more on islands, they stayed away from hogs and other predators. So there's a few things that really tied into how successful a nest was.
Thank you.
No problem.
I have a question. Not a very complex question, but which one of your projects has been your favorite and why? I mean, it can just be the species or anything. Just curious.
So right now, it's a tough one because I've enjoyed all basically the larger species from basically bears and wolves, but I've really gotten into this lynx project this past year because what's really unique about it is there's nobody in this agency that's worked on lynx in about 40 or 50 years. So there's a lot of questions that have never been addressed in Alaska on Canada lynx. And with them being endangered in lower 48, nobody has the data sets that we could probably get up here. So we'll be able to tackle a lot of questions that haven't been addressed with the species that it just isn't out there yet. So since so many people have worked on wolves and bears, there's a lot of information out there already, but with lynx and then some of the wolverine work I've done that I didn't really want to highlight because it wasn't that in depth, really are my most interesting right now.
Cool, thank you.
I'm going to read one question from the chat. It said, does Alaska Department of Fish and Game take interns in the summer or any at all? And that's in the past and because of the current situation with COVID. And if they do take college interns, what kind of qualifications are the most appealing?
So unfortunately, we don't usually take any college interns. With most everything handled in-house with having research biologists and management biologists, there's very little we hire for summer work. Our fisheries programs do though, but on the wildlife side, there really isn't many opportunities to volunteer or do internships. What really kind of comes up is if you want to really start getting in some of these projects, we do have a lot of tech positions that get posted regularly, and starting at a low level and working your way up. As you work your way up, oftentimes, if you're somebody that is really interested in being in Alaska and interested in the projects, that's when we start trying to look for master's projects for you, and we do it all in-house. And so we kind of develop our own biologists, and it's kind of unique to other state agencies.
Great, thank you. I know that was probably a big question for a few people. And then we still have time for a few more questions. So if you guys have any, sure
I
ask.
will point out though that being so far away, a lot of our positions are not as competitive as a wildlife biologist in the lower 48. So we just posted a deer biologist position a few months ago, and what would be, 50 to 100 applicants down in lower 48, we probably had 3 to 5 that were good quality applicants. So applying up here is one of the benefits is not as competitive as some of the positions in lower 48.
A follow-up question from the same person. Is there any particular location where individuals can apply for the tech positions?
So the tech positions we posted on Workplace Alaska. I don't have the link in front of me, but it should list all positions with Alaska Department of Fish and Game. You just have to filter to that agency.
Thank you.
So you're talking about feral hogs down in Texas affecting population numbers and things like that and hatchlings. Do y'all have any invasive species that really affect Alaskan wildlife?
Mammal-wise, not that much, but fisheries, we have a lot of vegetation in our lakes that do affect some of the trout and salmon numbers. For moose and bear and everything, there's really not much that's taken over that really inhibit their population numbers.
Thank you.
I have one. You can hear me?
Yes.
I'm going to post it as well. So I have two questions actually. One is very simple. Are the bears safe to get close when they're fishing? And the other one was, so within the sourcing dynamics that we're getting taught, like among meta populations, and since you're studying the wolves, have you been able to find dynamics like the source pack in the wolves, or it's a totally different dynamic? Because the yellow pack is different from all the other ones.
I apologize. I couldn't really hear you. Could somebody repeat the question?
You want to back me up, Dr. Grisham?
Yeah. Hey, Yuri. So in the chat, he says, I want to answer this one, Yuri. The answer is no, but I'll let the expert chime in. Are the bears safe to get close to when they're fishing? That was the first question. And then the second question is, within the source sink dynamics, have you guys been able to find a source pack for the wolves, or are the dynamics maybe not a source sink dynamic? And Yuri said the yellow pack, I'm not sure what he's referencing, probably one of the slides, a pack look different from the others, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so for the bears, so in the area I was talking about earlier, McNeil River, the bears, when they're fishing, will come remarkably close. These bears have been treated the same for the past 50 years, the same pattern of 10 people at a time walking on the exact same trail and sitting in the exact same spots. And surprisingly, they come as close as anybody could probably tolerate. They are completely focused on fishing, and they'll walk right by you and almost use you sometimes as a buffer to keep other bears away from the fish they caught. So it's been perfect track record there. Never been an incident between people and bears, but that's a unique situation. In some areas where bears are fishing, you definitely need to be watching out and always be respectful of what's around you up here. As for the wolves, that pack in the middle, the yellow pack, is the largest pack. It's up to like 20 members at times. And so it covers a lot bigger area. But as for source sink, the Kenai is pretty unique where, not pretty unique, it's very similar to most areas actually for wolves, is when people moved up here and the numbers of people came up here for gold mining, the numbers of wolves were almost extirpated from the Kenai. So they were likely founded from a few members, the new populations. And that's one of the reasons why we're wondering if the relatedness between individuals is why we don't see the territoriality between packs that you see other places. I mean, there's definitely distinct boundaries, but there isn't the violence between packs that you see in interior Alaska where wolves were not extirpated. It also could be a big food-driven thing where the Kenai Peninsula, the southern part down there, had a fire, I think in 2013, I believe. So that vegetation regeneration is probably peaking right now for moose. So the moose numbers are extremely high down there. And the abundance of food for them is allowing the packs to be really high numbers. So I have at least 2 packs down there that are over 20 members. And all the other ones are 10 to 12 members, which is really high numbers for a small area like that.
Thank you.
Dr. Saalfeld, this is Blake Grisham, one of the faculty advisors. I have a question about the Kenai Peninsula and the wolf pack. I was there in 2012 fishing, and someone said that there's an inland small population of caribou on Kenai Peninsula. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. This goes back to some arguments from our agency where they believe there was historical records of caribou on the Kenai Peninsula.
Okay.
So I can't remember when, but it was a number of years ago, probably 40, 50 years ago, they reintroduced caribou to Kenai Mountains.
Okay.
So there's 4 small herds, 250 to 300 members in each herd. So about 1,200 to 1,500 caribou on the Kenai Peninsula right now. But there are a few wolf packs on the Kenai that are caribou specialists.
And that was my question, if that was true.
They live up in the mountains and spend all their time following the caribou herd. And they're good at it. I watched a pack take down, well, this one actually took down, at the time I was watching, took down 3 mountain goats in a matter of 10 minutes. One wolf ran along a really high ridge line, scared the 3 mountain goats down the hill, and each of the other members of the pack each took one down. So these higher elevation wolf packs really specialize on goats and caribou, and are really effective at it.
Awesome, thank you.
I had another question about your studies with alligators. Where were you when you were doing that, and how much were you actually working with the alligators?
So we had hands on the whole time. I was just looking at my data the other day to send the Texas Parks and Wildlife. They had some questions on it, so this is fresh in my mind. I think we tagged and captured, I think it was like 2,200 alligators. So we handled a lot of alligators. And so we were catching 10 to 15 alligators a night. And so I was working all in East Texas, and I was based out of SFA, so in Nacogdoches. And my 3 study sites were Steinhagen Reservoir, which is down by Jasper, which is about an hour and a half, southeast of Nacogdoches. And then Kurth Lake, which is right there near Nacogdoches. And then I had a private hunt club that was up near Hawkins. And this also has a in-holding with a National Wildlife Refuge, Little Sandy National Wildlife Refuge. Those are my 3 main study sites for alligators in East Texas.
And Peyton, this is Dr. Grisham chiming in. Just as an FYI, if you have follow-up questions that Dr. Saalfeld can't answer about gators, Dr. Conway was his major advisor over that project, so he has some good insight if you want to ask additional questions later on. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I also had a question. Oh, sorry.
One more question. You're good.
Okay. First of all, I just want to say your life seems amazing. But I also had the same question with someone that said it in the chat, so I'll just read what she said. It said, have you found that getting a master's or doctoral degree is needed to get work on these projects? And if so, how did you go from through all that school? And what did you think that it was hard to get a job right after?
That's a really good question. And so just to give you a little background about my region. So the way Fish and Game is set up, we have several levels of biologists. We have the introductory technicians, and most of those do not have masters, but they're basically people that graduated with an undergrad degree, but want to get their masters. And they had some experience in wildlife that got them the technician position. But everything above that are classified as wildlife biologists. And in our region, everybody that's a wildlife biologist or above have their masters, or have their masters, if not their PhD. And so most of the people that are PIs on projects like myself all have their PhDs in our region. So it is valuable to get some further education for some of these positions, but it doesn't have to be immediate. So there's several ways of going about it. Like I mentioned earlier, that some really good technicians, we work with them and help them get a master's while they're on the job. But I find it very valuable to get the backing of the foundation of getting a master's or even a PhD to kind of get you the background to ask the right questions, the experience of writing and analyzing data. It helps you get move a little further into these positions. And yes, it is hard to start off sometimes and get your foot in the door. So even with graduating with my PhD, I can't remember how many positions I applied for before I got hired. And I even applied for 3 or 4 at Fish and Game before I got hired with my first one. And some of that is interview experience. It takes a while to give a good interview sometimes and to kind of how to sell yourself and sell your experience. And the other part is just, these positions are competitive right now. There are not a lot of positions, unfortunately. And when they are competitive, you need to have something that kind of sets yourself apart. And having the extra experience working on projects or different projects and getting a lot of experience as an undergrad really helps you set up for a master's. And then if you do a really good master's, then it sets you up for your next step.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us and taking this time out of your schedule to come and answer our questions and tell us about what's going on in your section of Alaska. I know we all really appreciate it, and it was really interesting to hear about.
Not a problem.
Do you mind unsharing your screen?
Let's see if I can figure it out.
I got it taken care of for you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Grisham.
Yeah, no worries.
All right. I'm going to share that link in the chat one more time for anyone who's joining. If you would want to join the unofficial TTU-TWS group meets, that's in the chat. And then the meeting is finished. I know a few of us will be around for a couple more minutes to do additional questions or anything else, but you guys are free to go.
Y'all have a good night. Thank you for coming tonight.